Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Karen Redlener, and with my husband, Irwin Redlener, we are the co-founders of Ukraine Children's Action Project. We really appreciate your interest in joining us today and to be able to learn more about UCAP, where things are in Ukraine, and what we want to share with you about what you've been able to support over these past 2.5 years. So Irwin and I are actually in Ukraine as we speak. We traveled here last week because it was a good time for us to come and visit with our partners, to meet with new initiatives, and to really check and see how things were going in Ukraine, and to connect with Yuliia Kardash, our regional manager. So let me just quickly introduce our webinar participants. We're very excited to share with you more about UCAP and what's going on in Ukraine. So next is my husband, Irwin. As you may know from reading our many newsletters, Irwin and I have worked together for decades in the area of health and children in crisis. Our experience is mostly in the US, but we have developed programs and done many different kinds of work with children in crisis. And that made us extremely interested in trying to understand what was going on with Ukraine children. Irwin is a pediatrician and has also founded the National Center for Disaster Preparedness at Columbia University. So Irwin, why don't you come on and say hi?
Hi there, and also welcome from me. And we're really thrilled to be in touch with all of you like this, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A. So be ready to kind of fire questions at us once the presentations are over, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the internet connection will hold, and we'll be able to share the information that we'd like to share with you. And then, as I said, look forward to your questions.
Great. Thanks, Irwin. Next, let me introduce Yuliia Kardash. Yuliia is the regional director for UCAP. She lives here in Lviv, Ukraine, and she is our eyes and ears on the ground. It has been critical to have Yuliia be a partner with us. She's been working with us for over 2 years and has really helped us maintain active connections to all of the projects that we fund and facilitate many different kinds of communications. So Yuliia, why don't you say hi?
Hello, everyone. I'm really grateful to be here today to share about UCAP's work and our challenges that we have faced during that time, and also in what way we can continue helping Ukrainian children together. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then in addition, we're very pleased to have a special guest with us. Dr. Yevhen Kudriavets is the Deputy Minister of the Ukrainian Ministry of Education and Science. We met Dr. Kudriavets last year, and we have been working with him collaboratively to develop unique resources, educational resources for children, both inside and outside of Ukraine. So Yevhen, could you say hello?
Hi everyone, it's a big pleasure for me to be here and to support the activities of Ukrainian Children in Action Project, and I hope we will have a wonderful session today and discuss the future of support to Ukraine and to Ukrainian children.
Thank you so much, Yevhen. So we want to get started now with Irwin, who will share more information about the winter emergency and our history. So, Irwin?
Thank you, Karen. And yeah, so I want to go through a little bit of the background of what UCAP has been doing, and also, before I even start that, reinforce or underscore what Karen was saying about how great it is to have Yuliia here in Ukraine, and we work obviously very, very closely with her. And Yevhen actually represents our closest tie to the government of Ukraine. They've been extremely responsive and helpful and working on these massive challenges, and it's really a privilege for us to be working with the government. We also have connections with members of the parliament, the mayor of Lviv here, but Yevhen's been pretty special about that. So I do want to start off with this notion of a major crisis in Ukraine, which is happening right now. And this is, when we communicate with our supporters, we try to be very straightforward. And the situation is challenging and critical enough that we don't have to kind of fabricate crises. We actually are dealing with very serious situations, which is why we have been so appreciative of all of your support and help. There would be no UCAP without what you're doing. But I want to say a couple of words about what's happening right now in Ukraine. So first of all, Russia, which has been on the attack against Ukraine, after the major full-scale invasion of February of 2022, they have been focusing their air attacks on Ukraine's infrastructure. And I mean by that, not just the buildings which they have been going after, including civilian buildings and cultural buildings, etc., but they are particularly focused on the infrastructure that produces energy, in other words, electricity, and produces heat. And Ukraine has been absolutely remarkable. First of all, it has been able to take out missiles and drones that are coming its way, but not all of them, obviously. So there are big problems when a Russian missile will knock out an energy producing plant, but the Ukrainians have been extremely capable of rebuilding them quickly, but not all of them. So this has been an ongoing chronic problem, and what it's produced, for example, for Ukrainian civilians, for children and families, are these long daily blackouts of many hours of the day where there's no electricity at all. There's also problems with many families being able to heat their homes and apartments when the power is out, and it's really been difficult, which is why UCAP's humanitarian activities right now are especially focused on humanitarian needs, in addition to everything else that we're working on. The Ukrainians are also extremely adaptable. They're very, very focused, first of all, on obviously, like everyone else is in the world, and making sure their families are safe. But the Ukrainian families that we've met, and we've met many, many of them, but they are big believers in the critical importance of education. So even when a school gets hit, which is what you're seeing here on the left side of the slide, kids are expected to continue their homework and their assignments, and sometimes they're online, sometimes they're not. And if power is out, you see Dad here holding a flashlight. Sometimes it's candlelight, but children are expected to keep on going. And actually, kids love going to school, and it's difficult and challenging, but they do manage to get it done. UCAP's response to this winter crisis has been a wide range of things and support that we're providing to Ukrainians, including generators for schools and for community sites, wood-burning stoves for individual homes, battery backups for families so they can sometimes keep the refrigerators going, but at least be able to charge their phones. And we, of course, have bought quite a bit of blankets, winter clothes, and boots, especially for children over the years. I want to show you this. This is, one of our favorite programs, which you've seen, I'm sure, talked about in our newsletters regularly, is something called recovery camps. This is where children who are living, have been living in really very close to the front lines in the war zones. They'll come for these 6-day programs. Karen's going to talk about it later, but they are dependent on having electricity in the recovery camp facilities. So last year, with your funds, we bought this big, giant backup generator, so they're never without power, and it's allowing them to continue to serve the children who are most in need. We also have some smaller things. This is like a little handheld, collapsible, solar-powered light that you open up. It becomes this cube. This cube will provide light at different intensities and also an ability to charge cell phones. So we're really trying to meet the needs of these families during this crisis. And the final thing I would say is, this is not old news. So this is an article from really just a few days ago on December 13th. Russia has been, stepping up its attacks on Ukraine's energy systems, and it's going to be continuing throughout the winter to make life as miserable and as uncomfortable for children as families as they can. So that's the winter emergency, and that's why we're really concerned and wanted to let you know what we're trying to do here and how much we appreciate your support. For those of you who may be new to UCAP, I'm just going to quickly review a little bit of history of our organization. So on February 24th, 2022, Russia decided to invade Ukraine. They came in on several different fronts, including an attempt to get to Kyiv, and they were hoping that in a few days or at least a few weeks, they would be able to collapse the government of Ukraine and then do whatever they're going to do to dominate this whole country. That failed. The Russians met a tremendous amount of resistance from an extraordinarily brave, responsive, and capable military force. The Russians were pushed back, although, as you'll see later, they have obviously, and I'm sure you know about this, still are occupying about 18% of mostly the eastern and the southern parts of Ukraine. And this, of course, has been extremely stressful. The Russians, like I said, were hoping for a quick victory. They didn't get it, fortunately, but they did accomplish, unfortunately, a tremendous amount of disruption. There were 43 million people approximately in Ukraine, including 7.5 million children the day before the full-scale invasion in 22. Of these 43 million, 7 million people in the next few days and a couple of weeks actually left the country. They lived in the mostly in the eastern part of Ukraine, where the fighting was most significant. 7 million people of the population moved out of the country as refugees and living abroad temporarily, and they moved to Poland, the Czech Republic, Germany, Hungary, some to the US, UK, etc. A lot of people sought refuge outside of Ukraine. IDP here stands for internally displaced persons, meaning that some people left the eastern part of Ukraine and moved to the west in the Lviv region and sometimes the Kyiv, the capital, but out of harm's way. So we have a lot of people that were disrupted. But what UCAP is focused on is the fact that 5 million children were among the population that has been displaced. So if you can imagine, 5 million is basically 2/3 of the entire child population of Ukraine, who either became refugees outside the country or internally displaced people. For children, this is a huge disruption of normalcy that I'm going to talk about later. But on the slide here, you see where it says the equivalent to 50 million US children. So proportionally, the US has 330 million children. So if we had this people and about 75 million children. So if we had 2/3 of American children displaced, that would be the equivalent of about 50 million kids in the United States, either leaving the country or moving away from one coast to the other. So There's a very, very significant impact immediately from this war and from the invasion. So how did we get involved? And like Karen said, we've been working with underserved child populations for many, many decades, including working with very indigent, very poor kids and families in rural America, homeless children, etc. And one of the people that we met along the way was the iconic American folk singer named Joan Baez. I'm sure many of you know who she was. We've been friends with her, and she's helped us and supported us through many programs that we've developed. And she's become a very talented portrait artist. So she called me up one day, just within a couple of weeks after the full-scale invasion. She said, I painted a portrait of President Zelensky, which you see here. And she said, how can I use this to help the plight of Ukrainians? And, we chatted, and I said, why don't you make some prints? We'll sell the prints, and then we'll go from there. And she did. She made the prints 24 hours. They sold out at $500 a piece. She raised $135,000. She called us back and said, what am I going to do with this money? How are we going to spend it? And Karen said, well, we don't really know. We've never been to Ukraine. We've never been to Eastern Europe, but why don't we go find out? So we started to investigate what organizations might benefit from this money that was raised by Joan. And the first thing we did was we went to Warsaw, to Poland, where refugees were kind of pouring into the country, into Poland. And Joan stayed with us, and eventually, actually, the summer of 2023, we took Joan to Ukraine, and Joan came with us, and we visited some places that had been occupied by the Russians. It's a little hard to see, but if you look, you'll see a person holding a guitar. That's Joan Baez, who came from her home in California and went with us to Ukraine, and she's there singing John Lennon's Imagine in front of that bombed out building in a city north of Ukraine's capital. So that's how we got started. We're here on our 7th visit, Karen and I, to Ukraine, and we've basically fallen in love with this country and the people that live here. But a couple of things I point out this is from our first trip to Warsaw, and this is where thousands and thousands of Ukrainian families were coming, seeking refuge. They were met by various aid groups. In this case, it was the Norwegian Refugee Association, and they would greet the families coming in. Obviously, a lot of the people were very disoriented. They were frightened. Husbands, fathers had stayed behind. Many of it, joined the military, and they were getting the families that did immigrate were very much helped by these aid organizations. And I would say here too that one of the things that we were able to do, this is on our first visit, we visited a high school in Warsaw, Poland, that had dedicated 2 classrooms to Ukrainian high school students who had just had to evacuate. And it was a very moving experience hearing from these young people how disrupted they were. There were seniors in high school from Ukraine who were supposed to be going to a university in Ukraine. They couldn't go. Some of them were angry. Some of them were really upset, obviously, about the interruption in their lives and a war happening in their country. On the next trip in May, a couple of months later, I had a chance as a physician to visit hospitals, to talk to officials there. This is a hospital, the first hospital I saw in Ukraine, and these are sandbags in the windows. They had incredible facilities in the basement of the hospital where they moved the sick newborns to protect them from potential attack. This is you'll see that tent down there on the hospital grounds, and that was about in case there was a chemical weapon attack, that they would be able to decontaminate people in that tent next to the hospital. And that final picture in the bottom right corner is they're basically twins. I'm sitting in between them, and that girl with the green blanket lost both of her legs in a bombing at the train station when they were leaving their home in eastern Ukraine. But I had an opportunity to visit with many children who had been severely injured in the war. And, then we're hooked. And then by May, we started the Ukraine Children's Action Project. UCAP is an official NGO. It's not for profit, as you all know, I'm sure appreciate, but the mission is basically pretty straightforward. We work with local officials and non-governmental organizations in Ukraine and host countries like Poland, and we work with families and try to do what we can to help in the healthcare, the well-being, the education of Ukrainian children. And the other thing in the mission specifically is this notion of us trying to help Ukrainian children who have left the country remember that they are Ukrainian, reinforce their Ukrainian identity, so when the war is over, they'll be able to go back home. Karen and I have done many organizations together, and this bottom quote here is how we function. We've been functioning again for a very long time. I would tell you exactly how long we've been working together, but I'm afraid you'll figure out how old we are, or how old I am at least. But anyway, the motto that we've always adhered to is we're on the ground. We come here to where we're trying to help. We have hands-on, and our work is transparent. And by the way, the entire staff of the Ukraine Children's Action Project is Karen, myself, Yuliia, who you just met, and a wonderful guy named Kevin McCabe, who works for us, who's an American, but he's living in Warsaw right now, and he's manages our communication. It's the four of us plus the EIF, the Entertainment Industry Foundation, and that's the entirety. We don't like to spend any more money on administration than we actually have to. So we're really pretty straightforward and a very lean organization. So I talked to you a little bit about the acute impact and the humanitarian needs, but there's a much bigger set of issues that are much more complicated that I just wanted to mention to you. It's a particular interest of Karen and me, and it's really what happens to children who are living in a war situation like this. And first of all, obviously, when their villages, their towns, their regions are under attack, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, loss of normalcy, which happens because their homes are gone, their communities may be gone, they're not going to school, they don't have their usual social interactions, and that is terrifying. And not only that, they can't get the services that they normally would have access to, including school, sometimes food and nutrition and nutritional needs met, healthcare, and so on. And this loss of normalcy, we can tell you, having worked with children for so many years, this loss of normalcy is extremely distressful to children and can have long-term impacts psychologically and otherwise. So what we're looking at right now is this possibility, if we're not working hard to make sure that we've mitigated this long-term generational impact. And you see at the top of the slide, it's called Ukraine's War Generation. I just wrote an op-ed about this, which we're trying to get placed right now. So it's not just the acute problems, it's the future. So I want to turn this back over to Karen, and Karen, if you can sort of continue the flow and give folks some idea of the specific programs that we're most interested in.
Great. Thank you very much, Irwin. And now we want to talk more specifically about how you all have helped really have an impact on the children of Ukraine, both inside the country and outside of the country. And first, we want to show you this map. It's a current map of kind of the country. It does show the area on the eastern border that is now currently occupied by Russia, but it also has the small area in the Sumy region, near the Sumy region of Ukraine, which is an area that's occupied in Russia by Ukrainian army. But the thing we want to focus on for this presentation is really those blue stars and the yellow star. You start on the right-hand side of the map. We're going to talk, tell you about programs that we now have partners in these 5 different regions. We're working with a children's hospital in Dnipro and developing a wonderful telehealth system. We have humanitarian partnerships in Kherson that are helping to, distribute goods as we speak. In Chernihiv was an area that was really impacted by the initial attacks in February of 22, where all vehicles were stolen and schools were damaged, and even school buses were taken. So we provided generators and school buses to help that community recover. In Kyiv, our connections with the Ministry of Education and our resources and relationships there. And then in Lviv, in the western side of the country, is really a big, an area, a community where many internally displaced families settled when they fled the eastern part of Ukraine. So in the west, there are thousands and thousands of families who have resettled for the time being in that area, and many of our programs are located there. Then the yellow star that you see in Poland represents not only Poland, but other countries where we have programs that help children who have fled the country. And we'll talk more about that in specific, but Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic, even the United States, we have organizations that are supporting children from Ukraine. So just to give you a snapshot of where we are right now, over the past 2.5 years, we've been able to fund 40 different projects that help children. And some of these projects were a one-time source of support when we bought the community generators or when we bought the wood stoves in the Chernihiv region, but many of them are ongoing projects. So we not only support them one time, but as they continue to expand their services and continue their services, and we have identified them as very high quality programs, effective programs, we continue to support them. Your donations help to continue the services that they provide. And we'll talk some more details in a minute. The 40 projects include 6 capital projects. So those kinds of investments, the generators and even building community centers. We especially like that because those programs will be there for the long term. We have impacted the lives of so many people through the programs that we've generated. Over 80,000 children, teachers, and parents have received some services or continue to receive services. We have an office, a UCAP office in Lviv, where Yuliia is located. And as you heard before, the regional director is so critical to the ongoing connections and relationships to our partners and programs. And incredibly, we're so proud of the over 12,000 donors that have come on board to support UCAP. And many of these donors, I'm sure many of you are monthly donors. This is an incredible ongoing source of support. And we really appreciate your, continuing attention to the needs of children in Ukraine. It's been a busy media period of time, and often we don't hear that much about what's going on the humanitarian side, the people side, the society side of the Ukraine war. And we want to appreciate all of you who continue to support these really important programs. We have raised together with all of you over $6 million, which we're very proud of, and we're very appreciative of all of you who have continued to give in an ongoing way. And then we also really have tried to keep UCAP and the war in Ukraine in the media. As Irwin mentioned, he in fact is going to be on MSNBC later today talking about this, and he is very effective at getting op-eds, articles, and appearing on television to keep this topic alive. So that is what we continue to do in a snapshot summary, all with your help. And then just to give a highlight of some of the partners we work with, we have local NGOs here in Ukraine. We have international organizations we work with, and actually some organizations in the United States that partner with us. For example, Children's Hospital at Montefiore, we sponsor a pediatric physician exchange program. The teachers unions we work with to reach teachers, and many of the city of Warsaw, the city of Lviv, are instrumental in helping us reach partners that do the kind of work that we want to continue to do. Our areas of focus in this, Irwin touched on this a bit in the mission statement, but based on our experience, our work over these many decades in working with children, the areas that we felt are critical to supporting kids during this time of crisis is initially, absolutely, humanitarian assistance to help kids get resettled after the initial insult and trauma of the full escalation of the war, the psychological trauma that they experience, the challenges with continuing their education, both, electricity challenges, air alerts, destroyed schools. There are many aspects of that. We're very focused on the issue of helping kids sustain their Ukrainian identity who live now outside of the country. It was an issue initially when the war started, but now as we enter almost the the beginning of the fourth year of the war, it's even more critical. And then, of course, critical healthcare needs have been interrupted, and we want to be able to support programs in that area. So as everyone mentioned, the first trip that we made to Warsaw and visiting the school and talking to some of the Ukrainian kids that had fled just days before, we realized that not only was trauma an issue that the kids and the families had to deal with, but these children were now going to school, and the teachers had no real experience in understanding what trauma looks like in kids, how it affects their ability to learn or attend school, and what to do about it in the classroom. So one of the first projects you helped support was the development of an online interactive course specifically for teachers. And so we worked with Columbia University's Center for Disaster Preparedness with experts on training, and we access to Ukrainian psychologists and others who have experience in trauma to develop a course for Ukrainian teachers, and also a course in Polish for Polish teachers who were really helping these thousands and thousands of children that appeared in their classroom almost overnight. It's an issue that we still continue to work on. In fact, we're working with a curriculum development company in Ukraine, in Kyiv, to develop a second version of this class, an updated version of this online class for teachers. On the photo on the right is a picture of the program that Irwin mentioned that we are so highly respect, the recovery camps. It's an incredible model that has been developed specifically in response to the war and the impact on kids. It's what we recently learned is called a high-intensity therapeutic program, because they offer 6-day camps with lots of therapeutic interventions for both kids and their moms, and it shows an ability to really identify problems early. And not only that, to provide intervention and more psychological services to the kids who are experiencing PTSD symptoms. This short film tells a little bit more about that program.
The 24th six-day recovery camp has already started. These camps were created for families from deoccupied and frontline territories, for those in whose life the war left the most painful mark. These are families from the most hottest area of conflict.
Херсон,
Гуляйполе,
Маріуполь,
Харків,
Мар'їнка,
Миколаїв,
Нова Каховка, Олешки, Енергодар, Початів, Генічеськ.
Participants live in recreation complex near Lviv. Psychologists, art therapists, sport trainers, animators, teachers from various creative fields work with them for 6 days. Participants are also screened for PTSD. After the camp, the most of the participants continue to work with psychologists, of course, for free. As the most participants say, recovery camp is the best thing that has happened to them since the beginning of the war. Their new life has begun at the camp. We thank everyone who supports us. We invite everyone who cares to join an incredibly important and necessary project.
So this tells you a little bit about what this model is. We have actually supported both 1-day and 6-day camps. We've supported over 61 camps over the last 2+ years, and have been collecting data on the information around the percentage of children who are screened for trauma and identify with PTSD symptoms, as well as the intervention and the impact of the intervention. So we'll be publishing that information and hoping to inform other programs about the effectiveness of this model. As we mentioned before, educational continuity and technology is an area that we have supported over the years. We continue to support more of these as we raise more money. So the 6 buses we purchased, we worked with our member of parliament here in Lviv to identify families, both IDPs and children who've lost parents in the war, and able to give them tablets, computer tablets, so that they can facilitate their education when they have to be online, and even to do their work when they're in person at school. And on the bottom right side is a photo of a lab that we supported for the School of the Visually Impaired. It's a state-of-the-art lab which helps children learn how to identify noises in their environment to help them be safe and to get around in the world. And about 20% of the children in this school are IDPs living in Lviv at this time. And as you all may remember, there have been a number of attacks and damage to schools in the Lviv region, and we are able to identify ways that we can help really quickly. And so we've sent out a couple of special alerts. We've been able to help 3 schools in the last year that were damaged by missile strikes, and help them rebuild labs, help them rebuild their computer labs and science labs, and help renovate those individual classrooms and quickly get them back into use for the kids to participate in. And as Irwin mentioned, the issue of cultural identity and educational continuity for children living outside of Ukraine was something that we really became aware of fairly early on in meeting with different partners. The other countries that welcomed refugees were, very accommodating and supportive, but many of the children were required to go to the schools in their host countries immediately. So that meant that their education went from a Ukrainian education to an education in German language, about German history and culture, for example. And this kind of requirement, necessity, of course, had an impact on the children and what they were, how they were integrating into the country, in some ways positive, but other ways, having difficulty continuing with their own Ukrainian education. Now, online Ukrainian education was available for, I think, 2 years or more for the kids who wanted to stay connected to the Ukrainian educational system. But as time went on, as we, approached a third school year for the students, that became more and more difficult. And now all children are required to attend the schools in their host countries. So what we've done is to develop and support programs in Ukrainian in these host countries. That goes everything from camps in summer, Ukrainian camps for children living in Poland and Hungary and Czech Republic, and also Ukrainian schools. We supported the establishment of a Ukrainian school in Hungary. It's now operating with funds from the Hungarian government. So we were able to get it off the ground and support the first year. And now they've qualified for government support. In Warsaw, we were able to actually visit our major program there for Ukrainian education. It's a weekend school for the kids living in Warsaw. And last year we funded the whole year focusing on high school kids and their preparation for their NMT test. It's a test that they take at the end of high school that allows them to be eligible for a university in Ukraine. So that was so successful that our partners wanted to expand it because there was a great demand from families for the younger children. Many of these moms, and we heard from them when we visited the school on Saturday, that they've been so upset because their youngest kids, children who are 2 or 3 when they came to Poland, now are speaking Polish, now do not understand Ukrainian as much as they did before, can't write Ukrainian when they get older and go to school. And it's more and more distressing to them. And so this school is in high demand. We're funding it for the whole school year. And there's a great need for this kind of program. So we're happy to be able to provide that, even if it's just for a small percentage of the population. And relative to this reinforcement of Ukrainian identity, we had been talking with Dr. Yevhen Kudriavets, who's going to speak next, about the need for some kind of national campaign called We Are Ukraine to sort of reach the children outside of Ukraine and connect with them around, a fun way of, interacting in their own language, playing a game online, which would be accessible to so many different ages. And we're in the process of helping to develop that with the Ministry of Education. And I think Yevhen is going to speak a little bit more about not only that, but the UCulture program and other issues related to education, about education for the kids in Ukraine and outside of Ukraine.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Irwin. And I'm very glad to be here and discuss the future of support to Ukrainian children. And first of all, thank you very much. Thank you for all your incredible job, what you are doing, and for your donors and partners for kindly supporting your efforts. It's very valuable and very important for Ukrainian society, and we know you in Ukraine as a very reliable partner in different ways. You have described a lot of Ukrainian actual state right now and what is situation we have and what is going on and kind of priorities. I need to rewrite in my mind my part because you are so very much in on the ground and described a lot of things. Thank you for that. Thank you for that involvement. Ukraine right now is fighting for our future existence and for our identity and for our this war is kind of the war of values, and education will play a crucial role in continuation of our fight, and especially in preparation for the future of recovery. And we are trying, as a government, we are trying to understand all kind of needs what we have in combination of, in the same time, emergency needs and at the same time development needs. As Karen already mentioned, the 3 years of war is coming this February, and we passed just 1,000 days of the war, and we can continue to be only in emergency state. We are thinking about the future developments, about the future for Ukrainian kids. And we have a lot of Ukrainian kids abroad. We have a lot of internally displaced Ukrainians. We have a lot of Ukrainians who have been in occupied areas and are de-occupied areas. We have still Ukrainians in occupied areas of Ukraine. And it means that we need to be very flexible. We need to build comprehensive strategies for the future of Ukraine. And in education, especially because education will prepare the future generation for Ukrainian recovery after war will finish. We need to speak about how education can play a crucial role in reskilling and upskilling Ukrainian citizens. And at the same time, we need to connect Ukrainians between each other if they will stay abroad and then they will need to be in the development of our country. Currently, we have very important needs for Ukrainian kids in Ukraine, which we call post schools. For example, we are trying to build comprehensive policies. Last developments, we have been able to start a new policy, school offline, which we are supporting kids to get back. It's combination of building shelters, providing devices, purchasing buses, and creating the environment when they can return back with hard inquiries and hard needs, but in the same time with soft skills. We need to build catch-up programs. We need to build and work with their mental health. We need to build their identity connection if they are currently abroad. We need to think how in the future Ukraine can support Ukrainian education can support development of democracy values and understanding what is going on and how to build different society and different community aligned with our past, aligned with history, with culture. And these things what we are trying to build in the way to not think only about emergency as lack of shelters, but at the same time think how we can build something more sustainable for the future. And in the same time, Ukraine Administrative Education is building the huge amount of reforms from the preschool education to school education, higher education, vocational education. And at the same time, we are on our path for European integration, and Ukraine is building the new, is actually adopting the new law on preschool education aligned with EU integration. And we now approaching to adopt the new legislation, new law on vocational education to support our recovery efforts to build more like reliable and more aligned structure of vocational education with EU standards and the future of economist needs. At the same time, we are proud that Ukraine is highly supported by a lot of international partners, and we are very grateful and thankful for that. Ukraine education system is very much depend on the support of international partners and donors, and we just launched a new program with the World Bank. We just launched new programs with UNICEF, and we are working with a lot of international organizations and foundations and philanthropists, and we are working very close with the Ukrainian Children in Action Project, and we are doing two incredible projects. If I may to say that as a part of this project, but you can actually judge them. But I know that you are one of like all of you who attended this. Who attended this part of this support. We are Ukraine is a unique connection between Ukrainians abroad and Ukrainians here in gamification way. And UCulture project is a project about helping to catch up in humanities subjects in the school in the way to build the vision of democracy building process and the future of development in Ukrainian education system. We want to say that UCAP is the first organization who decided to support these efforts, and we appreciate the efforts of UCAP that they are stepping in the projects and they believe in the great ideas, and as pioneers, and they're doing this on the first with a big attention and on the first base with attention to the great ideas to support Ukrainian children. And I know that in coming weeks it would be formally like 2 or 3 weeks from now, but just a small hint that the last decision of UCAP to support one of the projects with a seed investment was just very last decisions actually leveraged to get the full funding for the project. And I hope in 4 weeks from now, it would be even formally signed, and that project will be funded 100% because we had leverage of support of UCAP. I think this is how it should work. And this is what we are doing together. We are thinking about Ukrainian children. We are thinking about Ukrainian future. We are gathering in these efforts in a common vision of the future, and we are doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comments. As you can all see here, attendees on the webinar, how great Yevhen's perspective is and how helpful it is for him to be a partner with UCAP and help us really become familiar with projects that are important to the country, and also identify ways that we can help through seed grants and that type of thing. So UCAP funds are making a difference both short term and long term. So thank you so much for that. Another aspect of what we're doing around education and connection to children in Ukraine, it has this wonderful outcome of long-term asset development, building programs and buildings that will be sustained in Ukraine for the long term over many years. Really it makes us feel really great about the impact. And 2 of the centers that we have successfully supported over the last year are pictured here. On the left is a program that is a dormitory and community center for displaced and orphaned young people. We're working with an organization called Redlener, who is are experts in the field of taking care of and helping rehabilitate people that have been orphaned or have been taken away from their families. This is a particular focus on teenagers, and it is building their capacity to become more productive in society, take advantage of educational opportunities, understand some of the sort of social skills that are needed. It's an in-person dormitory. They live there for 2 years, and you know, by that time have developed a much healthier path for the future. And then 250 additional youth are able to participate in the outpatient, drop-in programs and services for them to get similar type of support. So this, you see actually Joan Baez on our visit last summer. She visited the building under construction, and then on the bottom is the final program building for the dormitory and the community center for young people. And it's expanding into other regions, and it's a very successful program. The program on the right, the pictures on the right show all of us in the construction site of a new kids club in Ukraine. We call it the Youth Enrichment Center. This is a model that we helped to develop with the director of Kids Club, and it has Kids Club is a well-known model in Ukraine, where it's like a community center, an after-school program with classes, also a preschool program. And what we did was we wanted to emphasize some of the courses, the educational courses that kids also will need to catch up in their education. So they also teach history, Ukrainian language, English, as well as coding and that kind of thing for the older people. And we had the wonderful opportunity to visit the program yesterday. Very cold and windy day, but the kids were there and they were waiting to welcome us at the center. And Yuliia has visited a couple of times over the last year, and just shares with us how joyful the environment is. This is a kids club that was built in a low-income community where there were many internally displaced families living. It had no kinds of activities for kids in the neighborhood. And just over a year ago, we were there for the grand opening, and then we continue to invest in not only the programming inside, but the playground outside, which is for all the neighborhood kids. And it's a place of real joy and creativity, and I'd say therapeutic kind of impact on the kids and families to have this joyful place to go. And yesterday, maybe Irwin will talk about it, but not only did we get welcomed by all the kids, but there was a young man, Matthew, who was 10 years old, who had recently learned English and was an incredible communicator to us, as well as translator for the kids and adults in the program. So we love this program, and you all should be very proud of it too, because you all contributed to this incredible development. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Irwin, who's going to talk more about the medical projects that we support and the ways that we help keep the topic in people's minds and awareness for everyone about Ukraine.
Great. Thanks, Karen. So I want to just mention a couple of the medical programs, but I want to make sure we have time to take your questions and try to respond. But the one thing I would say about this kids club, which is thrilling, if there was any way of all of you visiting this place, you would know instantly, without saying a word, why UCAP and all of you who support UCAP are doing making such an impact. It's incredible. And if we raise enough money, we want to finish out the basement of that center and create a music studio and a video lab and more activities for kids. So that's a good thing. Medically speaking, one of the things, look, we had never been to Poland or Eastern Ukraine before the spring of 2022. But I will tell you, as a pediatrician who actually developed and ran a pediatric intensive care unit in the US for a number of years, I am blown away by the quality and dedication and capabilities of the medical system, the doctors here. It's hard to really overstate how capable they are, but they need things. They need, for example, many more pediatric specific operating rooms, because they've had a big influx of children who've been transferred for care from the east to the Lviv region. They're busy constantly. They have incredible pediatric surgical subspecialists and doctors, and we're working with a partner called Kids OR, and we're building, UCAP's helping to build 6 new state-of-the-art pediatric operating rooms. It's quite thrilling. And we have an exchange program. It's only one way so far, but we've brought a number of pediatric specialty doctors from Ukraine to the Montefiore Medical Center Children's Hospital in New York City, and they come for a month. And we thought it was going to be a one-way street where these Ukrainian doctors would learn from their American counterparts. It turns out to be at least a two-way street. They are teaching as much as they're learning. It's really amazing. We're talking about some very talented doctors from Ukraine that come over. By the way, this is the lobby of the Children's Hospital at Montefiore. It's in the bottom left of the slide. But that's been a really great experience on so many levels. There are places we're working. Karen mentioned the city of Dnipro. here, but Dnipro is actually a region and has a big children's hospital, and many children used to come to the children's hospital at Dnipro when they needed subspecialty care. I mean, in other words, a pediatric heart doctor, a pediatric kidney doctor, or a neurologist. But now the roads are too safe because the Russian proximity of their military to Dnipro, and there are attacks on the roads and transport. So literally, as Karen was saying, we're now in the process of building a pretty advanced state-of-the-art telemedicine situation where the specialists at the hospital in Dnipro, the children's hospital, can communicate with colleagues many miles away from Dnipro and save many children and families the danger of having to travel through areas that are proximal to the front line. So anyway, this is something we're very excited about in that part of the country. And the final thing, I just want to say a couple of words about this issue about advocacy. You know, we've had a very, very rough kind of political season, which I'm not going to really get into for a bunch of reasons. But one of the things that's happened is that over time, the crisis in Ukraine is being crowded out by other news, both news that's political, news that's international, news from the Middle East, news from Sudan, recently news from Syria, etc. And what that means for us is that there's less attention being paid on the plight of children in Ukraine, and I don't really want that to disappear from the public consciousness. So we spend a lot of time with media. Karen and I have been on MSNBC. Last night I did a segment with CNN International. And actually, Karen, we're going to put this in the newsletter or make it available to all of our donors. We'll also tonight at 5:40 p.m. more or less Eastern time, I will be on MSNBC. And as I mentioned earlier, I've got two opinion pieces pending right now. But the idea is we want to make sure we're spreading the word that this crisis still exists. For 2025, we're going to continue. When I say we, and Karen says we mean literally we in terms of the four of us, but also the 12,000 plus of you. It's a small organization centrally, but a very big organization and a powerful one when you think about all of you who have been so generous with this project. You own it. So we're going to continue the emergency and humanitarian response. The programs that we've really gotten attached to that are doing a lot of good, we'll continue those. We have some ideas for new programs. And ultimately, we're going to sustain the advocacy programs that I just talked about. But the idea is at the end of the day, we really want to make sure that we've done as much as possible to protect children in the present and protect the future of Ukraine as a country. And that is going to happen. I think this is really the last thing I want to tell you. If I could only introduce you all personally to some of the thousands of young people that we've met in the course of our work here, you would be flabbergasted. These are talented, motivated, creative kids who are going to be the future of their country. They're smart as hell. We all sponsored. This is part of a group of high school students who came to Rochester, New York to participate in something called the Genius Olympiad, where they competed against representative groups of kids from 60 countries in the arts, in robotics, in science, in literature. And these Ukrainian kids ran away, dominating the main prizes that were awarded there. It's amazing. And this is a group of university and graduate students, Ukrainians, who have left Ukraine are going to get their education in the United States. This happens to be a group in the United States. They're going to get their degrees and their advanced degrees, and they're going to go back and help rebuild Ukraine. So this is not just about the winter emergency crisis, which obviously is very, very difficult, but it's also about the future of a country, of a democracy that Karen and I and Kevin have just really basically fallen in love with. So let me stop there. And now it's time. You see a little, if you're on Zoom, you may see a raised hand, a little hand. If you hit that, we'll call on you. We have some questions that came up before before we got into the webinar, and we'll take some of those as well. But if you have a question or a comment you want to make, hit the little hand symbol there, and we'll go from there. And but let me jump in first of all, and one of the questions we received, which is an interesting one, and I want to ask Yuliia to please respond. And the question was, how are the families in Ukraine dealing with the frequent blackouts, air raid alarms, and so on, which has taken much of the country from a normal life, as we all might expect it to be, and what they're dealing with in a wartime situation. So Yuliia, if you can make a couple of comments about that.
Yes, of course. Thank you for the question. And I must say that it's very challenging, of course, and it also depends which part of the country we are talking about. And as Irwin mentioned earlier, Ukrainians are very adaptive. So we do have different, some of the families can have generators or batteries, flashlights or candles, and we adjust. But with every new attack, the situation is getting worse. And for children, it's more stressful, of course, and especially if we're speaking about education, visiting schools. But if to speak about the air alerts, it's more stressful for everybody. And it also depends which part of the country, because sometimes it takes like seconds, a missile to hit the target. If we're speaking about eastern parts of Ukraine, like even before the air alert, there could be an explosion. So it's pretty dangerous. And if you're speaking about western parts of Ukraine, so the school is interrupted, children go to the shelters, so they spend a lot of time in shelters because of the air alerts. So it's really very hard sometimes and very, very challenging. But we try to keep going and keep, working, studying. I hope I answered the question. Thank you very much.
Sure. And
Thank you.
somebody asked a question about the fact that there are many kids who've had their education interrupted. They're either been on the move, or they're in areas that it's not safe to go to school, and I don't remember the number of how many schools have been destroyed or damaged by Russian attacks, but what does Ukraine and the ministry in particular plan to do to help children recover their educational process and move on from this very difficult period? So what happens with large numbers of children who need to get back in the swing of things educationally?
I think it's worth to start that it was not like continuous interruption in a way when we are speaking that education was interrupted, as you can imagine, during the usual understanding of what is it is. Ukraine government and Ukrainian education system and Ukrainian educators were able to sustain the education system in different regions, no matter the conditions. Even right now, we have a lot of Ukrainians abroad and a lot of Ukrainians internally displaced, but all of them are educated and they have programs. Of course, there are learning losses. There are problems when people were moved and they had different challenges of adaptation and different challenges of integrating in the new schools or in the new areas. But in the same time, education process is ongoing. Schools are operating, even we have schools from Lugansk and Donetsk region, which are almost 100% occupied, which are operating just online from other regions of Ukraine, and kids are continuing to be in their schools and keep connection with their teachers. We are, of course, that's why I'm giving this detail, because answering the question how planning to restore the education access, I would say that this is a question of some specific detail. What does it mean under access? We wanted to regain more in-person education, but in the same time, all of the kids are getting access. But in the same time, there are challenges with some group of kids. For example, if it's only online and they don't have digital device, we are fundraising for devices. We have launched Device Coalition for these kids with critical need of 120,000 devices, which we have announced last year, just in January. It was an event, but we announced this in December 2023. And I'm glad to share with you that 1,000 of that have been delivered already to kids with different partners from all over the world, and only 20,000 will be the new goal for 2025. We are very glad to share this. This we are trying to restore the access in the way of some additional perks to be in that. In the same time, we are working with learning losses, developing teaching development programs, some programs for kids, which helps them to be one step forward in the education system. That's why what I can share based on your question.
Great, thank you. Another question.
Irwin, I have a couple of new questions from the attendees as well.
Please do.
Rabbi Mitchell Smith has raised his hand.
Okay, so I did see, I wanted to find out about donating through stock, and I found it on your website. And I wanted to know if there's an email that one can write to and get a response, because I have more questions than there's time for me to, take up time here.
Oh, yes, of course. And thank you for your interest in donating stock. I'm glad you found the right link there. You can send to my email, kredlener@gmail.com. It's also on the bottom of our newsletters if anyone else wants to comment on that. There's also on the website, there's a contact us option for anyone who has a question. But thank you so much, Rabbi, for your support. We're so happy that you're here today. We also have now another question, another hand raised from Sherilyn Baylor.
My question is, I have heard so much disinformation about the Ukrainian war right now that I'm so depressed. I have heard that people are deserting, that the children who have reached military age, the refugees, will not come back to fight. I don't know what to do with this information. What should I say to people?
Right. Well, let me try to respond here. This is, first of all, in any war situation, disinformation is almost to be expected from both sides and all participants. I mean, and in every aspect of life, including our own political system, it's hard to know what's true and what's not true. So let me take a stab at answering this question. First of all, Ukrainian men and women of draft age have been volunteering a lot. I mean, there's excellent participation of young men and women who are fighting for their country, and also older men and women who are in the active military. That said, no one really knows. I mean, are there people that are just going to not come back to the country because they don't want to be in the military? You know, probably. But that is the case in, you know, every war you can imagine that we have ever participated in. And the reality is, though, that this is an extremely patriotic country. These are people, Sherilyn, that from the very beginning said, we're going to resist this Russian invasion and the occupation, and we're not going to stop fighting till every Russian soldier is out of our territory, period. And we have men and women working unbelievable hours in the military to defend their country and to do what has to be done. So overall, there may be, I'm sure there are examples of what you're talking about, but on the other hand, this is a extremely dedicated population that wants to do what they have to do in this war. And we all know, and what is true is that they need the support from the West. Russia is a mighty military power and much, much bigger. I mean, their population is multiple times the size of Ukraine's. And the Russians walked into a hornet's nest. They found out that the Ukrainians were not going to take this invasion, you know, with by retreating. But you know, yes, there are probably people who don't want to come back to join the military. I had lunch yesterday, Karen and I did, and Yuliia, with an officer in the Ukrainian military, and we met with him and his wife. He's the father of 2 children. He's been working 7 days a week, all night long as a drone operator, and he's pretty typical. I mean, he's feeling the stress of war like every soldier in every active war. But I would say overall, from what we know, this is a courageous, brave, patriotic country. And that's really what I would focus on. And I don't know whether answers your question, Sherilyn, but tell me, is there any other clarification that we can help you with, or what do you think?
No, this is what I believed about the Ukrainian people, that they are very devoted to their freedom and they don't want to give up. That's why I think it's disinformation. This I heard from a Polish woman who lives near me in Chicago. She is a younger person, but she is spreading this disinformation, and I don't know where she is getting the disinformation. But I listen to you on Stephanie Miller, and I listen to Phil Vittner, and I know that the Ukrainian people love their freedom and will fight for it. So I just don't know what to say to this woman who is spreading
know,
this disinformation. Thank you
Yeah.
for your time, everybody.
Thanks, Shirley. And by the way, yeah, what I would suggest that you say to this woman is nothing. You know, it's, you know, social media and misinformation has become a toxic force in our society. And bigger minds than ours, than mine, is going to have to figure out what we're going to do about that, and how do people distinguish between accuracy and misinformation that is very often deliberate. So just hang in there. Don't just nod your head, say thank you for the input, but I wouldn't try to argue with people, because they read whatever they read on any kind of social media platform, they will accept. So,
Okay. All right. Thank you for those comments. We have one last question from Peter Joseph, and I think then we'll end the webinar at that point. And thank you all for your participation.
Well,
Peter?
thank you for your courage, Irwin and Karen, and all your other people there on the ground. You're doing things that I think most people would be terrified to do. I think very frequently of life here in my peaceful hometown in San Anselmo, California, what it must be like to not know whether some missile is going to come crashing down on you at any moment, unexpectedly just rains out of the sky. It's like, it's unbelievable that you're doing this, and that the people and the children are tolerating it and moving on deliberately with their lives. I'm so impressed, and I'm happy to be a supporter. I'm going to up my contribution right after this call. Everyone, it's been a long time since we worked together. My question to you is the elephant in the room, as you can imagine, which is the coming of Trump, and how you're going to cope with his negligence and hostility towards Ukraine, and his love of Vladimir Putin and other dictators around the world. What are you going to do, and what do you think are the prospects going forward now?
Yeah, so Peter, thank you so much for calling in. And why don't we speak offline, because I would like to be fulsome in my expression about this. But the fact of the matter is that we have a unbelievable amount of uncertainty going forward. And by the way, we would have had uncertainty no matter what. And not just in the United States. We have issues in France, in Germany, in other countries where there's a massive amount of instability. But as an American, I must tell you, I am deeply concerned about the future of America's support for this country. And by the way, it's not just about Ukraine. This is about the preservation of democracy in a world full of turbulence and danger. And I think it's in America's interest to make sure that the democracy that's called Ukraine in Eastern Europe is preserved, is safeguarded, and is secure. And look, no matter who was elected, I would be saying the same exact thing. But we must support Ukraine. I don't know what the heck is going to happen now with not only Trump, but J.D. Vance and the other people that he's bringing into the American government. But let's see how it goes. But Peter, definitely reach out to me, and we'll talk more about this more specifically.
So I think that's a difficult question to end on. My perspective is that we don't know exactly what's going to happen, and there are pressures on various members of the countries that have to be involved in this decision making, and we are hoping for the best of a ceasefire with security for Ukraine, and we are going to keep working with UCAP and the country and our colleagues here to continue to develop resources to help the children and families through this difficult time. So thank you so much, everyone who is on this call. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your interest in Ukraine. Thank you, Yuliia and Yevhen, for contributing to our webinar. And we wish you the very best. And we'll keep you informed in all our different ways throughout the coming months.
And by the way, Karen gave you her personal email. This is not something just from the
Foolishly, perhaps.
Yes. No. And we answer every single communication that we get. So don't hesitate. We love being in touch with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Yevhen and Yuliia.